I used to look at people and think, wow, they're so lucky. You know, they're so lucky. I used to think women are so lucky that they get to work. I can't imagine being able to go out into work and just to have that right, and just to be able to have a mind of your own, to be able to, you know, make your own decisions without the repercussions.
I wanted to be a businesswoman. I always imagined myself wearing suits and having those suitcases that you pull back behind you, you know, and you're getting on an airplane. And, you know, I just always wanted to, that's what I wanted to be. That's what I envisioned myself as a businesswoman.
I was always the responsible one. I always had my bills paid. I had a boyfriend who treated me right, and I never really imagined myself being in an abusive situation. And whenever I saw that on like Law and Order or, you know, a TV show, I was like, I don't understand how women can get in these situations, or if they get into them, how do they not get out? I was only in my abusive situation for 2 months, but that by itself was too long and horrible, and it's gonna affect me for the rest of my life. And I can't imagine like these women that have been in them for years and years, but I can understand now how easy it is to fall into that and how hard it is to get out.
People do not realize that 1 in 4 women are in a domestic violence situation. To them, that's somebody else. They don't believe it's in their own backyard. They don't believe it's in their churches. And I think they would be surprised that it could be the neighbor next door. It could be the person sitting next to you in a pew at church, the person in the supermarket. There are no flashing red lights that say, I'm in this bad situation, help me.
Good morning, DaySpring Villa.
Well, DaySpring Villa is a certified domestic violence shelter in Oklahoma. The people that we work with are women who are seeking sanctuary from a domestic violence situation. We are the only certified faith-based domestic violence shelter in Oklahoma. And so with this, our mission is to provide physical, emotional, Christ-like care to enable women and their children to live God-honoring lives. The women that choose to come to DaySpring, most of them have experienced abuse a large part of their life, especially their adult life. Some of them, even as children, they were abused. And they're broken, they're just beat down, they have very low self-esteem. And we work on the healing, that part of the years of abuse that they have suffered.
We actually have enough bed space for about 55 women and children. I believe the most we've ever had was 52. And that's a lot of women and children living under the same roof, everyone here in a crisis situation. But we can make it work because we want to do what we can for them. When a guest arrives here, many times it is unknown to them what to expect. They can expect us to ask, first off, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Because some of them may have not eaten regular meals, and so they may come in. It may be 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they could be really hungry or really thirsty. So we're going to meet their immediate needs. They can expect us to just take time with them, to care for them, to show love to them, to help them get settled in, and just they can expect to be reassured that they are safe and going to be cared for.
What people might be surprised to know about DaySpring Villa is that we've been helping women and children since 1980, and that when a domestic violence victim comes to DaySpring, they can stay as long as it takes for them to heal and to be able to get out on their own and start their life.
Many times we find the women have been in various cycles of abuse, of bad relationships. And so we need to work with them on what they need to do to stop those cycles so that they are making a new start that is good, so that they will succeed and not find themselves in this kind of situation again. We want to help them, we want to help their children.
I was raised in a very strict family. It was a Christian family. I've never gone to a public school. I went to a private Christian school the entire 12 years, until I graduated. It was always the church school that I went to. I was, always in church, raised, that a woman belongs to her dad and then she belongs to her husband, and the parents are the one who kind of choose your husband and kind of direct you. So I was raised kind of in I don't want to say worldly is not a very good word. I was very in a protective environment, kind of more of a secluded environment, which I think kind of led up to the kind of abuse I ended up in and how it ended up so bad, because one of the worst things you could do would be to get a divorce. My ex-husband, we dated for maybe 3 months before we got married, before I was married. I was married at my ex-husband's parents' house. We were married by his uncle, who was a preacher, and it was kind of, I showed up at the wedding. I didn't have any part of planning it. I didn't have any input, or I just showed up. I got married, and I remember thinking, this is my life. I'm going to have to learn to deal with what I was dealt. When I had my daughters, they became my life and my focus, and I loved them so much. And he saw that, and he was angry that I didn't. He's like, how come you can't love me the way you love them? And I gave all my attention to them. And I think that's really when, he never was very considerate with me, and he was really rough with me. But I think the very first time that I actually got hit by him was when my daughters were 2 and 3, and he grabbed a vacuum cleaner and hit me with a vacuum cleaner. I did try to leave before. He had, I'm sorry, some of this is kind of hard, but he was getting really violent with the girls, pulling them across the floor with their hair and putting his hands around their neck and bending their fingers back and their wrists back. And it was getting really, really violent. And it was one thing, kind of to be violent with me, because that seemed to be okay. But when it's your kids. And so I did, when it was in 2001, the summer of 2001, I did leave. I got a protective order, and but I didn't go to a shelter. I didn't really know about going to a shelter. And I did try to do it on my own. I did get help through legal aid and the services. But he followed me everywhere. And if he wasn't following me, his family was following me. And he had binoculars in his car, and his family had video cameras, and there was somebody following me at all times. He comes from a pretty well-to-do family. And, you know, they just had me convinced that they were going to take the kids away. There was not going to be anything I could do about it. I would never see him again. I didn't think that it was possible to actually get away from him. I couldn't see that. I just didn't think there was any way. So I did go back, and I did drop the protective order. And my thinking was, and I think so many women's thinking is, that if he's going to have my children, it's better for me to be there to protect them than for him to have them and me not be around. I remember I went back and we went to the courthouse because I had to, you know, drop the divorce and the protective order. And we got back to the car. And he looked at me. It's like, now who's going to believe you now? And I know my heart just dropped, and I thought, I've lost my only chance.
She was very scared. She had been referred by a doctor that I had worked with previously, and he had cared enough about her as a client to get her out of the situation where she was and to help get her here. Amy and her daughters were very fearful. They kind of huddled together as they moved around the building because they just didn't know what was going to happen and what they were going to do.
When we got here, a lot of that is kind of, you know, I can't remember a lot of the details of how we got here. I continued to counsel with Dr. Kelly. He continued to see me all the way through my divorce. And he told me, not right at that time, but a few months later, he told me, he goes, I don't know if you know how serious it was. I was right at the point, I was either going to be dead or I was going to be catatonic and in a nursing home. And I was right on that point. He said, if you got any worse, he said, I don't believe I would have medically been able to bring you back.
Amy eventually, after going through a lot of court things, was able to get a job. And for her, that was a huge step. And as she has worked through the situation, she has just grown in leaps and bounds. To see what she was like 2.5 years ago, to see where she is now is just amazing.
At my age, I feel like I've just started living. I mean, I've just started living, which I hadn't ever done before. And it's been an awesome experience.